My greetings to you, dear viewers. Many of you probably remember the newspaper Soviet Youth, as it was then called, a series of articles called 7 Days in the Zone about the events that took place in the Perm anomalous zone. I was one of the 6 residents of Riga, who in the autumn of 1989, went as part of the newspaper's expedition to the Perm anomalous zone in order to determine what was really happening there. Since the first publications that took place in the newspaper were written by the newspaper's journalists, and those sensational, as it seemed at the time, information needed to be carefully checked. As part of the third expedition of the newspaper Soviet Youth, I went to the Perm anomalous zone in order to find out on the spot what is happening there. We spent 7 days in the zone. These are the 7 days that we have left from our vacation. And after working hard in the Kaliningrad region to find the Amber Room, a group of people went to the Perm anomalous zone. What happened to me is what we will talk about today and in the future. What happened there? We had certain tasks. We wanted to understand all those cases of the appearance of some incomprehensible anomalous phenomena, as journalists wrote, the appearance of bucket-headed beings, energy pillars, energy manifestations of anomalies in the zone. That's all we wanted to check and bring it under the evidence basis. That is, we were well aware that nothing supernatural could happen there. For the first 3 days, we were very good at it, and we could explain everything that happened there. For example, Pavel Mukurtov, one of the journalists of this newspaper, whose first articles were published, wrote about the so-called triangle of stars that appears above the zone, and as a harbinger of the beginning of contacts with extraterrestrials. They allegedly had a demonstration of animated films of alien content in their tents on the tent walls at that time. And as soon as we saw this triangle of stars above the camp on the first night, we all rushed to our tents and wanted to see if we would have a continuation of these animated films. Naturally, we didn't see any films. We realized that what the journalists described was more a figment of the mind than actual events. We observed the energy pillars both on the first evening of our stay in the zone and afterwards. What do journalists do when they see something unusual? They immediately sit down by the fire, with a notebook in hand, and begin to describe what they are observing. We, unlike the journalists, instantly formed a chain and rushed at these light pillars. We surrounded them to catch one of the aliens and see what it really is. It turned out to be the trunks of rotting trees, which glowed in the dark with a steady green light. Similarly, alien eyes which appeared in large numbers around our camp. We also determined that these are not alien eyes at all, but swarming fireflies. Despite the month of August, there were a sufficient number of them, and they flew from bush to bush, and from a distance it seemed that they were eyes of unearthly origin. And so it went on for 3 days, until on the evening of the 4th day, one of us saw an incomprehensible object over the camp. It was as if a black lentil-shaped cloud of a smooth shape had appeared against the cloudless sky and hung over the camp for 4.5 minutes. The size of it was colossal, about 80 meters lengthwise. It was hanging at a height of about 300 meters above the ground. And for 4.5 minutes, we all observed this object, if you could call it that. Because some of us saw stars through it, some of us saw nothing. But we were all in a kind of depressed state. That is, this object was hanging over us, and as if we were pressed to the ground, the state was not very pleasant. After 4.5 minutes, it began to melt, shrinking in size, and disappeared. That's probably all that we could find there in 4 days that could not be explained. We were joined by another group from Enerhodar. 3 guys came to us. They found out about this zone themselves. They came from Ukraine. And they, by joining us, somehow influenced the behavior of our group of 6. One of them said that he was an amateur hypnotist, and that in a state under the influence of space music, he could bring representatives of an extraterrestrial civilization into contact. He started meditating in his tent, sat there, played his music, and stayed there for hours. Some of our guys joined him and, locking themselves in tents, began to work in order to attract attention from the aliens. When I saw all this, I felt sad, because we were going to the zone with completely different goals, and I decided that the best thing I could do was not to join them, but just to engage in useful recreation. And the best outdoor recreation is fishing. So I went miles from the camp and fished. The first case, incomprehensible to me, happened exactly when I was fishing. I was standing in the middle of a clear sunny day right on the river reach and fishing, and suddenly, in an instant, I felt a terrible state of terror that swept me from top to toe. I immediately remembered the stories of the villagers of the Molebka village, through which we passed before entering the forest. They warned us that a she-bear was injured in the forest by hunters. She is very dangerous, aggressive, that is, so that we do not go alone, and so on. And so I thought, my first thought was that she was behind me, preparing to jump at me. I turned around short, but behind me everything was calm, there was no cause for alarm. And just as this horror came, so it also disappeared instantly. So I calmed down and continued to fish, completely forgetting about this incident. And at night, when the most important events began, I remembered this incident. It happened in the morning, somewhere at 3:30 in the morning, when I woke up for some unknown reason. At night, there were already frosts on the ground. The temperature dropped below 5 degrees below zero. So when we went to sleep in our sleeping bags, we already put on all the warmest things that could be put on, sweaters, cotton pants, and with all this climbed into the sleeping bags. We fell asleep for a very long time. It was difficult, it was cold. And at 3:30 in the morning, when I woke up, I suddenly found that the cold had disappeared. It seemed to me that the wind had changed, and the heat from the campfire had returned to the tent. And a pleasant warmth envelopes me. Moreover, a state of complete euphoria, rocking as if on the waves, and in parallel with this state, someone else's thoughts suddenly appeared in my mind. That is, my own thought flowed in my head, as it usually flows, and in parallel with it. But with even greater force, a second thought appeared in my mind. This was the first shock, because the first thought I had was that these sessions of self-hypnosis, which were conducted by the guys, somehow affected me, and that I also had something incomprehensible happen to my head. But since it had already happened, I was interested, because the thought was flowing parallel to mine. It was addressed to me. They were clearly addressing me. The question was literally, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" I decided, why not try to answer, especially at night? Everyone is asleep. I could see that all my comrades were asleep, except for the camp guards, who were outside the tent. Through the tent flap I could see the firelight. I could see the figures of the camp guards moving around with flashlights in their hands. I saw that I was awake, and I decided to answer these questions. I answered that I am the same person as all the guys along with me. I wondered who was speaking to me if it wasn't my own consciousness. But the questions came one after the other, almost without intervals, so I only had time to answer them. I don't know why I answered, but I had a feeling that it would be better for me and for the person who was addressing me, and I answered almost all the questions. About 20 minutes later, when the questions were over, and everyone was asking, "Where did we come from? What are we doing here? Why are we here? How long are we going to stay here?" and so on. Then after 20 minutes, when there was a natural pause, I asked the question, "Who are you? Who do I communicate with?" Instead of answering, I was told, "You will have time. You will find out later. And now, for better communication, we want to examine you." How to examine? Here I am, examine me. No, they say, we want to examine you inside. You know, examining inside is a pretty serious action. I perfectly understand how an autopsist works when a dead person is opened and his internal organs are examined from the inside. I felt uncomfortable, of course. They calmed me down, said, "Don't worry, nothing terrible will happen. It will go naturally, you just need to relax." But as a person who does not really want to go through any procedure, especially related to body examination, I naturally tried to avoid this examination in every possible way. I asked if there would be any complications after this examination. Would there be any consequences? No, they say, everything will be fine. Don't worry. When I realized that I had nowhere to go, then I said, "Come on, examine me." After that I was told, "Relax, calm down, and everything will be fine." When I relaxed and closed my eyes, I felt a warm, tingling spot go through my body. Here it passed around the head, went down to the bronchi, went to the lungs, and then the telepathic information appeared in my brain. The lungs are darkened. This is natural, since I am a smoker. I mentally answer that I am a smoker. Then move on to the heart. The heart does not work correctly. And then I remembered that even before leaving for Kaliningrad for field work, I was examined in a hospital, where it was found that I was developing cardiac angina. Knowing that I have cardiac angina, how to react to such information? I didn't even have time to mentally concentrate, as it sounded in my mind. Now the heart works fine. I realized that something had happened to my heart, but I didn't understand what, because there was no feeling in this area, as if something was being done there. But I've since forgotten what cardiac angina attacks are. So many years have passed since those events, and I do not think about angina to this day. Subsequently, upon my arrival in Riga, I was examined again, and the same equipment that revealed this angina showed that I had an absolutely healthy normal heart. But my acquaintance with them did not end there, because after this survey, which was conducted, I was told that now everything is clear, they can communicate with me. And then I finally asked the question, I repeat again, "Who are you? Who do I communicate with? And then the first, as they say, out-of-body experience happened. My soul has left my physical body. I saw, as if with my own physical eyes, the tent in which I was at that moment, but from a height of 5 to 6 meters. Then the height began to increase abruptly, and the ascent began. I could see the campfires, the figures of the camp guards, and the tents, but everything was moving away. I flew up to a height of about 300 meters above our camp, and then flew to the east. The flight lasted about 5 or 6 seconds, and in the middle of this flight, and the feeling of flight was complete. You know, when a person moves in space even with his eyes closed, this feeling of fast movement, it is felt. At the same time, I did not feel my arms and legs, that is, there was no sensation of my body. The view increased to 360 degrees, meaning I could simultaneously see the ground below me, the river, the forest, and the stars overhead. For 4 to 5 seconds, while I was being carried, somewhere in the middle of the path, my vision was turned off. I felt that even though my eyes were open, I couldn't see anything, but I wasn't afraid. I realized that, apparently, it is necessary for something. And when, finally, I felt that I was stopping in flight, my eyes opened, and I saw below me a glade of teardrop shape, brightly illuminated by blue light. Below me, in this clearing, I saw the figures of people. They were ordinary people, 2 arms, 2 legs, that is, the same as us, but the height is large 300 meters, so it is impossible to see something. All I could see was that their clothes glittered, shimmered in the light like metal, like liquid metal. It's like they're all doused in liquid metal. A few of them were bent over something in the center of the clearing, and the others were standing at a distance, as if watching. That is, I was shown that they are the same people as we are. About 5 minutes after this observation, I was brought back, and I had already opened my eyes in my physical body, in my tent. After that I said goodbye to them, and they told me, "Don't try to call us again. Don't try to contact us. We will find you at a certain time by ourselves. We will contact you ourselves. We will call you ourselves." And I fell into a dreamless sleep, slept until morning, even slept through breakfast. I woke up and lay in the tent. The guys had already gone to breakfast, and I was lying down and thinking, what happened to me? It is impossible to say that it was a dream, because I remember everything perfectly, down to the smallest detail. I saw that I was awake. To tell my comrades about this would have been a super bold step, because I knew perfectly well that after such information, I would simply be sneered down or told that I was out to lunch. I decided not to say anything to anyone for the time being, since I had been told that there would be a sequel, so either it will follow, or it will not be, if I could have dreamed all this as I thought. The only thing is, since I did not remove the diagnosis that I had made myself, that is, schizophrenia, since the split of my consciousness was obvious, I pulled one of our guys aside after breakfast, and told him, "Watch me. I can be dangerous because I can't control myself if something like this happens to me. And if suddenly I become dangerous, you must somehow neutralize me, so that I do not constitute a danger to the others." So he followed me relentlessly. All day, all evening, we went fishing together. Together we went back to the tent. Together we went to sleep, next to each other. At night, at about the same time, in the morning, there was a continuation. I mean, I woke up, but now I knew what I woke up from. And when the same voice sounded telepathically in my mind, I realized that literally from the moment when we finished, there was a continuation. I realized that there was nothing wrong with me, that I was communicating with someone. And these are people who communicate on a telepathic level, do not use speech. My thought perfectly reached them, and their thought, which I perfectly caught and could clearly formulate, I analyzed, understood it perfectly. They were probably people, but where they came from, who they were, was a mystery to me. So when the question and answer session was about to expire, I turned back to them and asked, "Can I see you again?" And they took me back to their place. I saw the clearing below me again. Again I saw the figures of people below and also two incomprehensible machines, which as it turned out, were alien spaceships. During this visit, I was lowered down to the clearing. I had the opportunity to move around the clearing. I had the opportunity to examine their spaceships, and most importantly, I had the opportunity to get to know them better. So I got a good look at the face of the man standing in front of me. And it happened like this. When I saw the flying vehicle in front of me, it became very interesting to me as an engineer. I've worked in engineering for 20 years. I wanted to take a closer look at it, especially since it hung rather oddly at a distance of 2 meters above the ground, not relying on any supports or landing gear. I was interested to see its design. From a distance, it looked like a solid piece of silvery metal, with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Imagine such a multi-ton structure that hangs motionless in the air. Also I see that there were several people behind it, whose speech I could not hear, but I felt that they were communicating with each other, as some information slipped into my mind. At the moment when I went to the ship, two people came out from behind it, and stood in front of me at a distance of 3 meters. As I continued to move toward them, the man in front of me seemed to cover the man behind him with his hand. I took that as a sign that I shouldn't get any closer to them either. Then I stopped and stared at the man in front of me. My visual memory is photographic. When I see a person once, I remember their facial features for many years. Therefore, when we returned to Riga a week later, I was kindly provided with a device for making a composite sketch. And it was possible to recreate the face of this alien person in the shortest possible time. The criminologists themselves were surprised. They said that in 45 minutes to fully identify a person's face, this is a record time by their standards. Nevertheless, this composite sketch was made. The only drawback of the sketch was that there was no light-colored wig of such a shape that it was necessary to put on the face of this alien person. It turned out that they had only black-colored wig, so we had to ignore the truth, move away from it a little, because the alien's hair was a light yellow straw color, and we put a black wig on the sketch. The face of this alien man is European, with perfectly straight features. Later, you will probably be shown a sketch, and the magazine itself, in which the first chapters of my book are published, will be shown. You will be able to see it firsthand. For now, I'll finish the description by saying that they have very well-proportioned faces. Even on a sketch, it was impossible to reproduce the symmetry of their faces, because they have very symmetrical faces. In our terrestrial people, if you take a face and divide it in half, then the two halves of the face will not necessarily correspond to each other. Asymmetrical faces, they have very symmetrical faces, that is, everything is completely consistent. Very beautiful symmetrical faces. Now often in newspapers and in literature, we have to deal with portraits of extraterrestrials, who are presented to us as representatives of other civilizations, some gray or green men with big eyes, or long arms to the floor, and so on. and they say they're aliens. But the human-like aliens look just like us. What we are shown as extraterrestrials are most likely either biorobots or synthetic auxiliary biostructures that are the executive organs of extraterrestrials. They often write about the disasters of flying saucers and so on, about the alleged crash of aliens. I do not know of a case where the dead bodies of extraterrestrials were, let's say, obtained by our authorities, although they say that they are, but they often show such little gray men. Therefore, it is easy to explain the UFO disasters by the fact that the structures are artificially created. They are all imperfect. Any most perfect computer is not more perfect than a human. So the accidents can be attributed to failures in the program of such biorobots. But let's return to our narrative. After that, I had to visit them several times. They moved me there easily and freely, as it seemed to me. And on one of my visits, I was even invited to travel with them to their planet. But that was later. Because that morning, as I stood in front of them and stared at them, I had a lot of questions that I wanted to find out. It was not clear why this vehicle was hanging in the air, and not lying like the other one, that really lay 50 meters away, with a trim on one side. They told me that this is the natural landing position of their module, that's what they call their small ships. And it is in the landing position they are so comfortable, just the gravity of the Earth is turned off under it. It was also unclear how they got inside these spaceships, because I found the entrance hatch under the bottom of the ship, not in the center, but a little to the side. It was just a dark oval, a circle, but there was no ladder leading up to it, no ladder at all. The height of these alien people is about 6 feet, that is, slightly above average. But even at this height, to climb inside this craft, you still need to be an athlete, to jump up, grab the edge of the hatch with your hands, pull yourself up and get inside this ship. At the moment when I thought about how they do it, I was shown one of the achievements of their technology, a demo screen that appears at the moment when there is a need for some visual information. That is, an opaque gray screen appeared in the air between me and these people, like the screen of a powered-off computer. The size of it was quite large, about 1 by 2 meters. And suddenly on it, light lines began to draw an image of the contour of the forest that surrounded us, the ship that was in front of me. And as soon as all this appeared on the screen, a figure of a little man appeared under the ship, which, as if on an elevator, was slowly drawn into the womb of this vehicle, and disappeared into it. I understood this as a demonstration and at the same time an invitation to visit, to inspect the interior of this ship. When I thought that the ship is in such an unstable state it is not on the ground, but hanging in the air, I mentally completed this picture. I imagined that I would now climb into the vehicle, the hatch would close, and the ship would take off. And goodbye, Earth. Maybe farewell forever. The moment I thought about it, I saw it all happen on the screen. The hatch slammed shut, the ship took off, the image instantly disappeared. They looked at each other, no smiles on their faces. I understood it this way: if you don't want it, nothing will happen. That is, there was no compulsion on their part, but I also did not have the desire to look into this ship at that moment. I decided to examine the ship from the outside, so I went around it as if counterclockwise, looking around, looking for antennas, portholes, as they usually describe spacecraft. There was nothing of the sort. No welds or rivets were found on the surface. The metal was absolutely smooth, sleek, without traces of soot. You know how it happens from moving over long distances, and it shone with a steady light. Moreover, it even seemed to glow a little from the inside with a grayish-bluish light. Actually, the whole glade was lit up. I looked for sources of light, where the light comes from, but the grass glowed, the outermost trees of the clearing glowed, and everything was illuminated by a steady grayish-bluish light. Perhaps because of this light, the faces seemed to me not yellow, not pink, but bluish. But their faces were exactly the same as mine. I couldn't look at my face, so there was nothing to compare it to. It was during this visit that I learned a great deal about them, as I had the opportunity to ask questions. I literally bombarded them with a barrage of questions. My questions were very different. Where did they come from? What are they doing here? And so on. And you know, I got instant answers. The only thing, there were moments when simply my question was not answered. Then later, I realized that any question that might qualify as tactless is simply not answered. When I asked where they came from, the distance from their galaxy was given. They said they were from another galaxy. The distance is 17 million units. Subsequently, it was found out that 1 unit is approximately equal to our light year. That is, our Earth is 17 million light years away from their galaxy. To make it clear, a ray of the sunlight that extends over a distance of 1 year. This distance is 1 light year. It's 17 million light years away. The figure is so grandiose that it was hard to imagine how far it is. When I asked how many generations had passed in this spaceship before they reached our galaxy, our sun, our Earth, instead of answering, the screen showed a demonstration of an intergalactic flight. There was a clearing, the same ship, instantly everything was in motion. The ship took off, turned into a dot at the top of the screen and disappeared. And then the picture began to take shape to my side. The thinnest vertical line of light formed, which coiled into a spiral. The spiral shrank to a dot. The dot flashed, the light line went up again, then forked, and went around the edges of the screen. From the top of the dot, this spaceship landed, increasing in size. But the panorama was completely different, hills without vegetation. And I realized that this was the view of their planet. The entire demonstration took 5 seconds, and then it was concluded that by folding space or penetrating through folded space, an intergalactic flight takes only 5 seconds. A few years later, while continuing to work, I was able to clarify this time. I was told that, at that time in the zone I was shown this picture in slow motion, so that my consciousness had time to perceive this information. In fact, this happens much faster, that is, by our earthly standards, about 1 to 2 seconds takes the entire flight. In a planetary system in their galaxy, approximately 5 planets around their sun are inhabited. There are more than 20 planets in their system. 5 are inhabited and 3 belong to this civilization. The name of this galaxy, the name of this civilization, was all given to me. I know it now. But, for obvious reasons, I don't want to talk about it publicly. Later, in one of the programs, I will tell you why I do not do this. It doesn't matter now. Because how it sounds in their language is quite difficult for us people to perceive by ear. And then, when the next meeting was arranged, when I was told that communication with me would continue, I would receive information. Moreover, I was offered a choice of several topics for my personal development that they offered. I made a choice on the topic of the development of individual human bioenergetics. Since then, I have continued to work in this area. Continuing my acquaintance with the zone, when I was already working as a contactee, and had to open up to the guys the next day, to my great surprise no one reacted to this with laughter, everything was accepted normally. Naturally, everyone was interested in the information. Then the whole team took part in drawing up a number of questions that interested absolutely the whole group. We were interested in the search for the Amber Room, which we were not going to finish, not assuming that the Soviet Union would collapse, that the republics would separate, and that it would be problematic to move from Riga to Kaliningrad and back, through Lithuania. That it would all freeze for a while. Therefore, we were interested in questions about the search for the Amber Room, about the existence and appearance of life on Earth, in particular, the appearance of man on Earth. Is Darwin's theory of the transformation of man from ape, the evolution of man, tenable? Was there such a person as Jesus Christ, or are these myths? All of these questions were asked and answered during our stay in the zone. They confirmed that Jesus Christ really existed. They know this man very well. They knew him, as it was said that there was such a person. About the origin of man on Earth, they clearly said that man has always been intelligent. He was never a monkey or any other subspecies. We were always human, but we didn't evolve from apes. Darwin's theory is completely untenable here. Apes have always existed parallel to man. We are all aliens from outer space. We were brought here from outer space. The Earth is colonized as a convenient place for our species, our race, to live. The Earth was colonized at the behest, at the direction of the Supreme Cosmic Intelligence. That's when the term, Supreme Cosmic Intelligence, came from them. What is it? When I asked the question, what is the Supreme Cosmic Intelligence, they said, this is what you have accepted as the Supreme Deity, that is, God the Father. You often confuse us and take us for gods, because we have been watching you, coming and going, all through the history of mankind. Not only we, our ancestors, came to your planet and carried out the process of colonizing the Earth by you, people, then you mistake us for gods, although we are only a link between you, your civilization, and the higher hierarchs, that is, those entities that exercise control over the planetary systems, control over the energy of the planetary systems, and above all in the cosmic hierarchy is the Supreme Cosmic Intelligence, which exercises control over all processes occurring in the universe. When I received this information, the screen, as I said, displayed the graphical information synchronously. I was shown the earth, the surface of the earth, its 7 subtle bodies, all the spheres that surround us, the zone of the higher hierarchs. And above all, the symbol was shown, an isosceles triangle, the human eye in it, and the shining rays around this triangle. I did not attach much importance to this symbol at the time, because it was said, it is a symbol of the supreme cosmic intelligence. But later, when I arrived in Riga and visited one of the Orthodox churches, I saw this symbol on one of the wall frescoes and was stunned. I called the priest over, addressed him politely, and asked him to explain what the symbol was. He said, "It's a symbol of God the Father." Do you understand? That is, the people who participated in the painting of these churches, since ancient times, knew about the existence of the supreme cosmic intelligence, about its purpose, and about its symbol, which is present in churches, in many temples. That is, people had this knowledge, but, apparently, due to technological progress, they simply lost it. This has greatly influenced my atheism. I realized that there is a very strong knowledge in religion, and my interest in religion from here increased so much, that I returned to the bosom of the Orthodox Church. Now I am a very religious person. Moreover, my faith is based not just on unquestioning obedience to the Church's rules. This is supported by the knowledge that I received from outer space. Regarding the bringing of our life to the earth, I have another question. After all, if they participated in the process of colonizing the earth by us, then once, a very long time ago, they themselves were brought by someone to their planet. So who brought them, who populated the planets with their civilization? They said that this process involved more ancient civilizations that carry out continuous colonization and exploration of space, planets suitable for life, because protein civilizations, which include our own, are quite rare in space. There are many types of advanced space civilizations, but protein ones are quite rare. Therefore, whenever there is a possibility of colonizing a suitable planet, this process is carried out under the control of the supreme cosmic intelligence. Here I could finish the story about staying in the zone, if not for a very important point. When our vacation came to an end, and we realized that we had to go back, it was a pity to part with the forest, and with the zone, and with this communication. We all thought that as soon as we left the zone, everything would stop, communication would end for at least a year. All 6 of us planned to come back to the zone next summer, and try to participate in this communication process again. Before leaving the zone, when they said goodbye to me, I was following the guys. I was walking with a backpack. I suddenly felt in my mind their thought, which addressed me with the question, that you are leaving. Have a good luck, and with their wish to continue working with me, no matter where I am. By the code that was given to me by them, I was able to contact them, as I was told, at any distance. When I returned to Riga, my attempts to contact them were successful. There was again this state that I was heard, that I was seen by them. There was an opportunity to continue communication, which continues to this day. I continue to work with them. But over the years, I have received a very large amount of information from them. I think that's what we're going to talk about next. In the autumn of the same year, 1989, closer to winter, another group of Riga residents started from Riga with the aim of visiting the zone already in winter. Frosts there are very strong. The group was not very warmly equipped. I was worried about how they would feel there. When the group left, more than a week later, in one of the communication sessions with my space friends, I asked them for the opportunity to see the zone, just as I was transported directly in the zone itself, showing their base, their clearing. I asked for a chance to see the zone. Again, I had an out-of-body experience and was transported there. That is, again, my consciousness, my soul was transported thousands of kilometers from Riga. I saw the zone in winter, snow, tents, figures of people also from a height. It was daytime, and the sun was bright. I saw very well almost every figure, every tent. When I saw that they were all alive, that they were all moving, healthy, then as soon as I was brought back, and I opened my eyes in my physical body, I took a piece of paper and drew a plan from above, as I saw the camp. What tent colors, where the tents were, who and where was. I memorized and marked the time. Soon at the end of their stay in the zone, the group returned to Riga. At the meeting in Riga, I asked the guys to reproduce the picture of that day. They worked together to make a drawing or diagram of the camp, where they were standing, where and what kind of tent was standing. When we put our two drawings together, theirs and mine, they matched absolutely, 100%. I came to the conclusion that this was not a figment of my mind, it was not a demonstration of some pictures. I really saw it, I really saw the camp with my own eyes.